This is the same bill that cut $1 trillion out of Medicaid and over $180 billion from SNAP.
If it's a terrible product, it should go broke. What we're finding out is that the government is insulated from this concept. They can have a terrible competition, no value, no merit, and still make a lot of profit off the customer, the students, who pay their life's blood for the rest of their life trying to pay off loans.
The debate begins with a sharp accusation, a sweeping bill that allegedly cuts $1 trillion from Medicaid and more than $180 billion from SNAP, all while claiming to make college more affordable. Critics argue the logic is contradictory. How can stripping healthcare and food assistance suddenly improve access to higher education? The controversy intensified when the legislation was rebranded after public backlash. At the heart of the dispute lies a deeper question about government priorities, fiscal responsibility, and whether political branding can disguise policies that many Americans fear will leave working families struggling even more.
We've heard our Republican colleagues claim that their solution in the One Big Beautiful Bill will somehow make college cheaper for working families. This is the same bill that cut $1 trillion out of Medicaid and over $180 billion from SNAP. The logic is hard to follow. By leaving millions without health care and struggling to buy groceries, higher education will apparently just become more accessible. It is no wonder that when the American people finally had the chance to see what was in this hideous bill, it was so unpopular that my Republican counterparts had to rebrand the name. But just because you put working families in the title.
Representative Burgess Owens steps into the spotlight, challenging what he sees as misleading rhetoric from Ilhan Omar. The exchange is more than partisan sparring. It reflects two fundamentally different philosophies about education and economic mobility. Owens argues that rising tuition, ballooning student debt, and declining outcomes are not sudden developments. Instead, he points to long-term structural shifts in federal oversight. According to him, blaming recent reforms ignores over a decade of policy decisions that reshaped higher education financing and expanded government control.
Title doesn't mean you are not screwing them over. The reality is there is no amount of sugarcoating that can undo the damage that will be done by this disastrous legislation.
I want to start off with just, first of all, agreeing, Ms. Morgan, with your comments about how bad things are. Explosion of tuition, enrollment in which kids come in, they enroll, they quit, they leave with debt they'll never pay off, with job skills they'll never have, and not be able to really build the American dream. But this isn't from the last 6 months of the Family Working Tax Plan. It's from the last 16 years, when in 2010, President Obama, through the Affordable Care Act, took everything from the private sector and put it into the government. So the government has controlled this for the last 16 years.
Owens traces the roots of the crisis back to 2010, when federal student lending shifted dramatically under President Barack Obama and the Affordable Care Act era reforms. He contends that removing private sector competition insulated the system from accountability. In his view, when government becomes both regulator and financier, the natural pressures of the market weaken. Colleges continue raising tuition, students continue borrowing, and institutions face little consequence for poor outcomes. The result, he argues, is a generation burdened by debt without guaranteed opportunity.
We cannot look at the last 6 months and say because our reforms, all these things are happening. We're now about to take care of that. I think the biggest thing that I'm concerned about is how little we know in our country about capitalism. We are the #1 destination in the world because of something called capitalism. Now, just quickly, what does capitalism mean, and what does it mean to this industry here? It's about return on investment. It's competition, it's merit, it's value, and the product of all that is profit. Now, if it's a good program, there's a lot of profit, which it should be. It should spread throughout the entire country. People should be wanting to.
At the center of Owens' argument is a defense of capitalism. He frames higher education as an investment that should produce measurable returns. In competitive markets, he explains, value, merit, and performance determine success. A good product thrives, a bad one fails. But he claims government-backed education programs operate differently. Without true competition, institutions can deliver weak outcomes while remaining financially secure. Students, meanwhile, absorb the risk, committing decades of earnings to repay loans for degrees that may not translate into stable careers or upward mobility.
Take advantage of it. If it's a terrible product, it should go broke. What we're finding out is that the government is insulated from this concept. They can have a terrible competition, no value, no merit, and still make a lot of profit off the customer, the students, who pay their life's blood for the rest of their life trying to pay off loans. So we need to get back to teaching that. I think that when I listen to my friends here from Utah and Florida, I'll say this about Utah. We lead the country in terms of small business startups.
Owens contrasts this system with entrepreneurial cultures in states like Utah and Florida, where small business growth reflects innovation and accountability. He argues that opportunity flourishes where competition is encouraged and results matter. Extending that philosophy to education, he calls for diversified pathways rather than a one-size-fits-all college mandate. Transparency about outcomes, graduation rates, and job placement could empower families to make informed decisions. In this framework, institutions that fail to deliver value would either improve or close, restoring balance between cost and opportunity.
There's an entrepreneurial concept. There's a culture in which we're trying to figure out how to give the best return on investment to where we're dealing with. And I think the same thing, the way I listen to how you guys are solving things, same thing with Florida. We need to realize that government solutions have never worked. I just came back from Latin America last week. They are realizing after the last couple of years, they want to get away from that stuff. So no, it is not the government that's going to give us the out of this. It's going to be entrepreneurs, innovators, those who truly are in the game for the right reasons. That is, to make sure our kids are number one, and not the institutions.
A key part of the debate centers on alternatives to traditional four-year degrees. Owens highlights trade schools and vocational programs as legitimate routes to economic stability. Electricians, plumbers, and skilled technicians are essential to the nation's infrastructure, yet these careers often receive less cultural prestige than university degrees. Expanding access to technical training, he suggests, could reduce debt while meeting labor demands. The broader message is clear: education should align with real-world skills and measurable outcomes, not simply perpetuate enrollment for its own sake.
Not the professors, not those around just kind of sucking in everything they can from government payouts. So I'm excited about the fact that we're having this conversation. We can all agree it's broken. It's cost too much. We're getting too little of a return on investment with our kids coming out, not being prepared to go to work, not being hopeful for their future, being angry about everything. That's not what our education should be about. And the other thing is this: let's just make sure we're transparent enough.
Supporters of Omar argue that social safety nets such as Medicaid and SNAP create stability that allows families to pursue education. Critics counter that expanding subsidies without structural reform merely deepens dependency. This clash reflects two competing visions of the American dream, one rooted in collective support systems, the other in market-driven accountability. The debate grows more complex as discussions of healthcare and food assistance intersect with tuition policy, raising questions about whether the issues are interconnected solutions or political distractions.
Everyone realized they don't have to go into debt to go to four-year college. How about trades? If that could be their way out, if they could look at that as being their way to achieve their dreams, let them go for that. I think it's very helpful that we finally have competition for higher education. It's going to make higher education better. It's going to make sure that the best prove themselves, and outcomes will allow parents to say, okay, I will invest in this, or the kids will invest.
In the end, the exchange captures a larger national conversation about government's role in shaping opportunity. Should higher education operate primarily through federal backing, or should competitive forces dictate survival? Is rising debt the result of insufficient public funding, or of misaligned incentives within universities themselves? As lawmakers continue to argue, families face immediate decisions about cost, value, and future security. The stakes extend beyond one bill or one speech. They touch the core of how America defines merit, responsibility, and the path toward lasting prosperity.
Invest in this because it'll give me a good return on investment. And if it does not, then that institution should go broke, period. So I'm excited about the fact we're finally, over the last 6 months, putting in reforms. 6 months. So please, as you go back and think about how terrible things are, it's not because of the Republicans' one big, beautiful bill.